Okay. Perfect. Well, happy sunny Saturday, everyone. Hopefully it's sunny where everyone is. And welcome to our summer book launch. So we're here today to celebrate some amazing books coming into the world, but we're also here to celebrate the writers. So as I was thinking about today's event, I was thinking about how the Academy is a great community of writers where we support and share and teach each other. But we're also a community who celebrates each other. So as I was thinking about writing, I started thinking about cooking because I love to cook. And so when I was thinking about cooking, I was thinking about all the work that goes into it. You know, you got to get the ingredients, you got to do all the prep, then you got to put it together, you got to hope it works, the whole process of it. And it's a lot like writing, and it's a lot of work. And if you're anything like me, by the time you get to the end of the meal and it's time to serve it, you're too exhausted to eat. So today we want to remind everybody that at the end of the meal, we have created it, and it is important to celebrate it. So today, let's not only celebrate these wonderful books, but let's celebrate the chefs, the writers that created them for us. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Eileen, who is going to introduce all these wonderful books and writers to us.
All right, so welcome everybody. This is one of my favorite events that we do, and I think it is because, as Steph was talking about, it takes so long to get to the finish line, and it is such a wonderful thing to have a moment where we can actually pause and just say, like, I did a thing. And it's a really big thing. If you haven't already come into them, I can guarantee you, the more you start telling people you're a writer, the more you will meet people who are like, I'm going to write a book someday. They are legion, the people who are going to write someday. So the fact that you have done it and crossed that finish line is well worth celebration. So what people can expect is I'm going to introduce each one of the writers, and then I'm going to give each author a chance to introduce their work and to do just a short reading from their work, so you can get a taste of it. I'm going to have each of them share a link in the chat window once they're done reading, so you can find out where you can buy such a wonderful book, and I will encourage you to check them all out. All right. Once we're done, we'll also do just a little bit of questions. So if we have a chance, we'll have a chance to talk to people about their questions are for the book. All right. I'm going to start us off with Valerie, who I was like in her fancy room, which I have now discovered is actually her laundry room. So we have talked about the fact that that is, in fact, exactly what Stephen King did. So you are in fine company in your laundry room. Valerie is the author of My Blue Agave, My Island Runaway, My Island Hideaway. She spent her childhood in the small town of Honeyville, New York, a name that inspires her fictional town, Honeycomb Beach. Years later, she moved to the East Coast of Florida, where she penned her novels, inspired by her love for the barrier island, where she lived for over a decade. She got the writing bug in 2009, self-publishing a work of nonfiction. She's a 2018 Space Coast Writers Guild short story finalist. And now Valerie continues to plan the Honeycomb Beach series, adding more quirky characters to her quaint fictional beach town. Valerie, tell us about your book.
Well, this book is called My Island Hideaway, and it's contemporary women's fiction with a splash of romance. And it takes place in a Honeycomb Beach, which is my fictional town in Florida. And in this book, the protagonist is Ivy Wilcox, and she is a mother, and she's come back after 15 years to reconnect with her daughters, Megan and Sarah, who she hasn't had any relationship with at all. She's signed up for, well, before that, she's also come back as a chef for the Honeycomb Wild Honey B&B. And the problem is she really doesn't cook. She can cook breakfast, but she's not really a chef. And also her daughters don't even recognize her up until this point in the book that I'm going to read to you. So to set up the excerpt, she has just signed up for 12 sessions in Pilates in her daughter's Pilates studio to try and gain some proximity to her daughter, even though she doesn't recognize her. And now she's back in the kitchen in this little excerpt here. I'm bubbling from having been bold enough to sign up for Megan's Pilates classes and hum back in the kitchen, ready to take on my chef's duties. It's late afternoon and guests are beginning to come back from the beach. I've decided to prepare my special macaroni and cheese for them to have later. It's the only dish I know how to make without a recipe. The girls love this dish, and I'm in the mood to celebrate, having just come from seeing Megan. There's a lightheartedness in my chest, and when Courtney rushes into the kitchen, I greet her with a smile. Courtney's her boss. I'm making macaroni and cheese, I say. I clap my hands together and snatch up a pan, grab some butter, cut off a chunk, and pop it on the stove. I have something to tell you, she says, and I need you to hear me out. Okay, I say, adding some flour to the pan, mixing it with the butter as I wait for her to give me the news, which I expect isn't going to be appealing, seeing the way she crosses and uncrosses her arms, as if she's not ready to let it out. I've spoken with a journalist from the Honeycomb Beach Times, and he wants to write an article about the B&B. Oh, Courtney, that's wonderful. Her tone had me startled, but now I see there's nothing to worry about. And, she says, I've asked him to come to dinner, so Eric and I have decided to have him sample a Mediterranean-style meal. The roux for the sauce is starting to get thick and slightly lumpy, like my throat. Meal, as in the one I'm supposed to make? Yes, of course. When is this meal supposed to happen? In 3 days, and I want you to show him your skill. Pull out all the stops, from the moussaka, the spanakopita, baklava, you name it. Those dishes take time, I say. Shouldn't we wait until it's all ironed out? I've only just arrived. Give me a little more time. Her enthusiastic face goes sullen. It's her business, her advertising. She deserves to have an article in the paper. She entrusted me with this job, so I have to find a way, even if it means watching cooking videos all night. How about we simplify? I say, adding cream and milk to the pan, mixing vigorously. And make a nice fresh Greek-style Niçoise salad with goat cheese and an easy soup. That's lovely, but really, let's show him your stuff. I don't have any stuff to show unless he'd like some macaroni and cheese for dinner with a side of pancakes. I toss some salt and pepper and even some mustard powder into the mix, sprinkling it over the top, wishing I were Julia Child or any real chef, not the fake one I'm pretending to be. And there's one other thing, she says. Sarah's coming tonight. What? Tonight? My smile vanishes, not because I'm not happy, but because it's another hurdle I'll have to leap over. Will she know me or won't she? Either outcome has significant ramifications. And I don't think you should lie to her, Courtney says. I think you should tell her who you are if she doesn't recognize you herself. I can't, I say. I've already committed to 12 Pilates lessons as Chef K. So if I'm going to pose as Chef K to Megan, I have to do it with Sarah too, or it won't work. It all sounds ridiculous when I say it out loud.
Yay. Who doesn't want a dinner of mac and cheese and pancakes, eh? A little carb, just a meal of all times. Thank you so much. That was
Thank you.
So that's my island hideaway.
Yes.
So people will be sure to check that one out. All right, so hang on because we're going to have more readings and then we'll have questions for everyone. All right, so next up, I am very excited to introduce everyone to Claris Lam. So Claris writes fiction and poetry. She's currently writing several novels, with Engagement to Die For being her most recently published work. You can learn more about her work at clarislam.ca and follow her newsletter at clarislamauthor.substack.com to keep up with all of her updates. So let us go over and have Claris tell us about her book and give us a little reading from that as well.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. First of all, my name is Claris. Sorry for not clarifying the pronunciation of my name. Many people mess it up, so you're not the only one. So Engagement to Die For is an amateur sleuth murder mystery book that was published back in June on the 20th this year, which is great. It's also the second book in the Harlow Mystery series. The first book was Winner Takes All, which I self-published last year in June as well. However, you don't have to read Winner Takes All to understand Engagement to Die For. Do I recommend it for the sake of some context and continuity? Absolutely. In Engagement to Die For, our main characters, Aubrey, and as well as others, are invited to attend an engagement party on a train. But the party gets ruined when murder ensues, and Aubrey, along with the others, have to figure out who did it before anything worse happens. The excerpt that I'm about to read is part of the first chapter. This is the part where Aubrey gets a phone call from her mother, Geneva, telling her that she's engaged and also inviting her to her engagement party. Aubrey also learns that she has a twin sister, so that will be very interesting. Aubrey Celestia Harlow could not believe what she was hearing. Her mother? Engaged at this age? It wasn't like Geneva Harlow was an old woman, but Aubrey knew that she wasn't young either. And sure, older people got married, but as far as Aubrey knew, her mother hadn't bothered dating anyone since she and her father divorced back when Aubrey was only a baby. Aubrey grew up never seeing her father's face, and as far as she knew, growing up, she had never seen her mother date anyone. The fact that her mother would call one day and say that she was engaged wasn't anything she expected ever. That's exactly what's happening, Aubrey, her mother stated, and Aubrey could hear the happiness seeping through her voice. I'm engaged. How? Aubrey knew that she had to know details. How did something like this sneak up on her without her noticing? Was it because she kept throwing herself into work? Because she barely checked her own social media since the whole incident back at the island and posted way less often than she used to? Was it because she didn't keep in constant contact with her own mom about anything? Probably a combination of all three, she figured. When did you date him? How long have you been dating him? I started dating him a month or two before you were at that beach resort, Geneva managed, a sigh leaving her. Given that you were recovering from your murderous ex-girlfriend, I didn't want to bring it up to you so soon and worry you. He's a fine man, I promise. I'm sure you'll love him. You'll get to meet him at the engagement party we're having. Only since a month before the beach resort incident? The whole beach resort murder happened about 6 months ago at this point, meaning that her mother only dated this man for 7 months, and now they were getting married? That seemed odd, but she supposed she should be happy for her. At least her mom was doing fine in the romance department, regardless of speed. And the party is, Aubrey asked. Another sigh escaped her mother, she stated. Tomorrow. I'm sorry I didn't tell you earlier, but I've been so busy preparing for the engagement party and starting to make wedding plans, so it slipped my mind until now. Oh no. Aubrey groaned, hoping that it wasn't audible enough for her mother to hear. Mom, you know that my boss is going to kill me for taking time off last minute. I barely have anything nice to wear for that long of a period, let alone a day's worth of a party at all. What am I supposed to do? If you want to lie and say it's a family emergency, you can. You have my permission. A chuckle escaped Geneva at that, and her voice softened. I really want you to come. I'm worried about you, Aubrey. You've barely been going out at all ever since what happened at that beach resort, at least as far as I know. You're missing out on so much, and you really shouldn't be at your age. Mom, a sigh left Aubrey. I thought we talked about this already. I'm happy being in my apartment and with my new job. I'm financially secure and I'm very safe. What more could you ask for? I want you to be happy. I know you wanted some time off from dating after everything that happened, but you could even use this party to get a new date, maybe. Aubrey gritted her teeth. I am happy, as is, Mom. She didn't need a date to be happy. She didn't want one. And I'm not exactly ready to start dating again after everything. Just come to this party, please, her mother insisted. I want this to be special, and I want you to be there. Aubrey knew that her mother had a point. The very least she could do was be there for her. All right. I'll come. Even if the party was last minute, she wanted to be there to support her mom, even if she didn't know who the hell she was marrying. So, where's the party? It starts at the Terra train station. You'll have to be there by 10:30 tomorrow morning to meet up with me and the others on the train. It's going to be a 4-day round trip on the train the whole time, but I promise you'll enjoy yourself. Leighton's thought of everything. Leighton? She hadn't heard that name before. Who's Leighton? My fiancé. A happy sigh left Geneva. You're going to love him. We'll see. Aubrey took a deep breath, thinking of Terra train station. That was about an hour's bus ride from where she lived. Well, I'll do my best to make it on time. Congrats on the engagement, Mom. And one more thing. Geneva's voice suddenly grew solemn, and she cleared her throat before continuing. I'm inviting your twin sister, Aria. Aubrey froze. A twin sister? She had a sister, period? Aubrey grew up as an only child. I have a sister, and you never told me until now. Why? Yes, you have a twin sister. I figured since Leighton and I are getting married, it would be good for you to get in touch with more of our family. A sigh escaped Geneva before she continued speaking, her voice lowering a bit. I know that you have questions, Aubrey. I promise to let you know when we get on the train. But your sister's a good person. You should finally get to know her. But why didn't I know about her earlier? Aubrey frowned. If her mother was going to force her to attend her engagement party and meet her fiancé and Aubrey's twin sister that she'd never heard of or met until now, she wanted answers as soon as possible. Geneva paused, and Aubrey heard her clear her throat before answering. When your father and I divorced, we ended up taking joint custody. Both of you weren't even one yet at the time. Because her father moved out of the country of Aria, though, we both mutually decided there wasn't any point of either of you knowing of each other. But things have changed. I'll explain more on the train. Mom, Aubrey started, but her mom cut her off. I should let you pack up, dear. I'll see you tomorrow, okay? I love you. Aubrey repressed a sigh from leaving her once more. I love you too, Mom. See you soon. She quickly hung up before putting her cell phone on the desk, sighing as she looked around her room and then towards the door leading out the kitchen/living area where Bastian was. How am I going to tell Bastian about this? And who the hell is my mother engaged to? What kind of person is Leighton that he can just romance my mother and get engaged to her in a few months? And why would she only tell me about my twin sister now?
Yay! Thank you so much. I just have a hunch, years of writing, that this train trip is going to get complicated. I don't know, call me crazy. I just have a sneaking suspicion that it's not going to go well. Thank you. I hope you scroll back and you see in the chat, people love the dialogue. So you get extra points for reading the dialogue. It feels like a play. It was really lovely. All right.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, 4-day trip on with the family and the sister you didn't know. What could possibly go wrong? Okay, let us go over to Lena. Lena is a voracious reader from age 8. She combines elements of different genres in her writing. As an adult newly recognized with autism, she creates characters that reflect this experience. When Lena isn't writing, she reads, practices karate, and drinks a ton of tea. She resides in New Westminster, Canada, with her family and their fuzzy overlord, Ash, the fluffiest of gray cats. Lena.
All right. Hopefully you can hear me. I think I muted myself. Here, or unmuted. Here is The Wish. It is my second book being published by Black Rose Writing in Texas. I wrote it in October 2020 till February 2021. And right now it's in pre-order and will come out August 17th. 3 men, 2 timelines, 1 wish. Haunted by her choices, including marrying an abusive con man, 35-year-old Elizabeth has been unable to speak for 2 years. She is further devastated when she learns an old boyfriend has died. Nothing in her life is right. That night, Elizabeth wishes for a mulligan. When she wakes to her surprise, it is no longer 2022, but 2017. Though thrilled to have a chance to fix past mistakes, it is not perfect. She has a stalker and is still voiceless. Just like before, her boyfriend slips into a mysterious coma. So she enlists his brother Christopher's aid to determine the cause. In their investigation, he becomes her staunchest ally and her unexpected soulmate. Elizabeth's stalker threatens her happiness, as do those who wish secrets to remain buried. If she can't reclaim her voice, her former boyfriend will fade away in a coma, and her stalker may claim her life. So that's the blurb from the back. And I was going to read from chapter 1, page 1. So right at the very beginning. But I think I want some tea first because I'm losing my voice, which works with Elizabeth perfectly. I didn't set that up. But it seems to always happen. Sometimes change is infinitesimal, slow. You don't notice its icy fingers wrapped around your throat, stealing your breath, your beliefs, changing who you are until you don't recognize yourself. I was in the middle of such a change before the accident, the slow erosion of myself into nothing. I hadn't been behind the wheel in 2 years, not since the accident. I didn't like to be reminded of those dark days. Few career women in their early 30s don't drive, but walking kept me from another harrowing experience. Plus, I discovered I enjoyed the fresh air and exercise. I crossed the museum lobby and nodded to the recent hires at the information desk. Though I'd never spoken to any of their fresh, youthful faces, I stepped into an elevator and headed up to the piece of my office and lab. "Hold the elevator," came the call from across the lobby. I ignored the request. Christopher, the conservator of our museum, raced toward the closing door, shoved his arm inside, and slid in beside me. I rolled my eyes. I'd almost escaped, but hadn't been fast enough. Trapped beside him, his heat radiated toward me, and I scooched sideways. He wore running clothes, and his dark, wavy hair dripped with sweat. His muscles looked hard, the kind only dedicated athletes or gym rats achieved. I hoped he planned to shower before work. "Hey, Lizzie," he smiled, the dimple appearing in his cheek. My teeth ached with the effort as I maintained a neutral expression. I was not, nor had I ever been, a Lizzie. I hated that nickname. My name was Elizabeth, which suited me. Serious, classic, and a little standoffish. The latter may not have suited me when I was younger, but it did now. I'd been burned too many times to let people get close to me. Life had been filled with harsh lessons. I nodded to be polite. Being around Christopher was a constant struggle to maintain professionalism. What I really wanted to do was yell, "Leave me alone. I don't need anyone." More than anyone else, though, he brought out the worst. Why wouldn't he take a hint and leave me alone? "Cat got your tongue again." He leaned across me and pressed the button for his floor. "My magnificent presence has once again rendered you speechless." He winked. The elevator ride lasted an eternity. How long did it take to get to the 4th floor? He smirked. I raised one eyebrow, but he knew I wouldn't respond. Even before I'd stopped talking, I hadn't spoken to him, not since his brother Brandon had disappeared without a word of explanation. Why start now? "Oh, Christopher." His mincing tone meant to mimic my voice as he clutched his hands to his chest, caving in his broad shoulders in an attempt to appear feminine. "You're so handsome and strong." He batted the dark lashes that fringed his ice blue eyes. "I'd love to meet with you after work. I don't want to be around anyone, but I find your magnetic charm irresistible." I cast a withering glance in his direction. Other women fawned all over him. He'd probably been told those exact words last week. He could have been charming if he wasn't loud and annoying, and half the time what came out of his mouth was so full of expletives that I had to filter them out in order to listen. If I spoke, I couldn't imagine it would be to him. He'd never told me anything I wanted to know, like where the hell his brother had gone. Not that I'd asked. I'd been too proud. And I'm going to stop there. So
I love that. I had a chance to pre-read this one, and I really enjoy this concept. So if you're thinking you might need to try yourself a time travel, I'm going to tell you to be sure that you check that one out. Never with Lizzie, only with Elizabeth, of course. All right. Next, we're going to go over people change it up. They give themselves pen names and throw me off. So you may call her Kirsten, but we're now going to call her Kay Francis. And she's the author of the swoon-worthy contemporary small-town Port Russell romance series. She used to spend her days trying to educate young minds, but now writes feel-good romance books because it's much easier to get characters to do what she wants. Kay is a rehabilitated prairie girl, wisely relocating away from the snow and cold to the rain and evergreen of the West Coast more than a decade ago. She celebrates the supernatural beauty of her adopted province in the small town setting of her books. She lives near Vancouver, British Columbia, British Columbia with her adventurous husband, 3 talented teenagers, and 2 demanding schnauzers, Twix and Hazel. So with no further ado.
Hello, good morning. So I'm going to be sharing from my first book in the Port Russell series. It came out in March, and the second book, Redemption, is going out for pre-order on July 15th and will be released on September 1st. So check that out. But I'm going to read right a little bit from the back, and then I'm going to start in the first chapter. So Courtney Merrick has come home to Port Russell to lick her wounds and has no intention of falling in love ever again. When she runs into her childhood friend and secret first love, Josh Cameron, as she's bailing her grandparents out of jail following their arrest at the old growth logging protest, all her careful plans and the comfortable life she's built since returning home start to crumble. Josh Cameron, now an RCMP officer, has returned to Port Russell, his true home, hoping his new posting will allow him to reconnect with the only girl he's ever loved. But she's resistant to his charm. When his brother and father's dubious business practices escalate the local old growth protests, it throws Port Russell into chaos, and Josh and Courtney team up to uncover what's really going on. As they work to uncover the truth, can Courtney continue to resist falling in love? Right, so we'll start at the beginning. Courtney sighed, blowing the bangs out of her eyes as she pulled her Subaru into the small lot outside the squat brick RCMP station, the late May sunshine a strange juxtaposition to her errand. Didn't the police have better things to do than to arrest septuagenarians? She threw open her car door, lifted the strap of her crossbody bag over her tangled brunette ponytail, and jumped out. Courtney marched across the small dandelion spotted lawn to the front door of the detachment she'd always thought looked like something one of her grade 3 students had built out of Lego bricks, square with a window on either side of the door. She couldn't believe she was here. What on earth had Graham and Gramps done to get themselves arrested? And who the heck had arrested them? With Gramps finally retiring from running the logging company, Courtney thought maybe her grandparents would travel or explore new hobbies like birdwatching or oil painting. She hadn't expected them to take up a life of crime. An electronic buzz announced her presence in the small vestibule as she opened the door. A chest-high counter topped with plexiglass barred the way to the offices in the back of the building. A thirsty plant sat on the dark green arborite counter next to a rack of recruitment brochures. Courtney snorted. There probably wasn't a person of recruiting age, herself excluded, for at least 40 kilometers. Once both people could drive, they left Port Russell and never came back. She seemed to be the only exception to the rule, returning at the start of the school year after 6 years away. Hello? Courtney called after glancing around for a bell and coming up short. The fluorescent light above her flickered off, then on again, humming loudly. Framed photos of the current detachment officers hung on the wall behind the counter, drawing her eye to a familiar face. Josh Cameron? He was back here in Port Russell? I'm just going to leave it at that.
Leave it there. All right, well, I have to do a call out because I love all the setting descriptions. So that, of course, I love that. And so if you're looking for, I think, a very fun summer read, you're going to want to check that out. And you're going to want to notice that everyone noticed that you named your dogs, but not your husband or your children in the bio. So they did point that out, just in case they're happening to watch this recording later, they will be aware of that. All right. I am very excited to now take us over to Sarah, SP, as we go by. She lives in the middle of nowhere, BC, where she writes urban fantasy and contemporary romance, takes care of her son, dog, 2 cats. In a few more weeks, she'll be adding goats to the list. And apparently we're going to need the names of those goats because that's what we're in it for, is the names of the pets. All right, over to you, Sarah.
Okay, so I'm going to read from my very first book, Truth in the Smoke. It's an urban fantasy. It's the first of a trilogy. So I'll read the blurb. It starts with a quote from in the book. "You're Faye. I could feel the magic when I walked in the door." When a famous actress says this to me, I'm torn between telling her she's insane and asking her for more details. But she leaves before I can do either, and when I try to find her the next day, she's dead, and I'm left with more questions than answers. Why did she come to me? Why was she killed? Who did it? And was she crazy, or did she know something I don't? I can try to forget it ever happened and move on with my life, or I can break into her house and the scene of her murder to investigate. What can I say? I'm really good at bad ideas. So I'm going to read from approximately the middle of the book. She has begun investigating Muriel's murder. She has found her way to a man named Ronan, who tells her that she's a changeling and is actually Fae. So she's on her way back to Ronan's house after interviewing the last people to see Muriel alive. And this happens. I was almost at Ronan's house when the ground seemed to explode from under the tire of my motorcycle as I careened off the road. I managed to stop without falling off. When I looked back at what happened, a monstrous creature stood there. He was about 7 feet tall, maybe more, and had tusks that jutted out from his bottom jaw about 6 inches. He had a club in one meaty hand, though his claws made the club seem a little redundant. Short, bristly black hairs covered his body, and he suffered from a major hunchback. A mossy loincloth draped around his hips and hung down past his knees. "Can I help you with something?" I asked him, getting off my bike and shrugging out of my pack. I tried not to notice how my hands were shaking as I dropped it on the ground and searched for anything I could use for a weapon. The creature started stomping toward me. Or I guess he walked normally. It just seemed like stomping because his bulk shook the ground with every step. "You have offended my mistress. She wishes I should punish you." His voice was gravelly and deep, like the earth he had just emerged from. I actually liked the way it sounded. I was sure it would grate on most people's nerves, but I could hear the magic behind it, and it made the creature sound as powerful as he looked. "Ah, I see. Can you tell me who your mistress is and what I did to offend her?" I stepped away from him toward a cluster of trees. There had been a windstorm about a week ago, and a bunch of branches had broken. Instead of clearing them up, the city had simply pushed them off the side of the road. "It is not my place to ask questions of my mistress. It is only my place to obey." Of course, that sounds quite reasonable. But you understand, if I don't know what I'm being punished for, I'm liable to do it again. One of the first lessons of Krav Maga was you didn't have to participate in every fight you were invited to. The best way to win a fight was to avoid it altogether. And I wanted to avoid this one, if at all possible. But the creature was advancing toward me, and there really wasn't any place I could go without putting myself in danger by turning my back on him. I knew I could never outrun him since his legs were far longer than mine. He wasn't leaving me much choice. I found a large branch about 4 feet long and thick enough that I might be able to use it to defend myself against that massive club. That is also not my concern. I was now within swinging distance of the creature's weapon. I gripped my branch. Ronan only lived a bit down the road, but he would have no idea I was in trouble, and I couldn't exactly pause to make a phone call. "Before we begin, could you tell me what my punishment is?" "I will strike you 5 times with my club, as my mistress directed." "Right. Well, you know that'll likely kill me." The creature stared at me. "Got it. Not your concern. Well, then you should know I'm going to have to defend myself. To the death. Yours or mine." I raised the branch into a guard position. I'd learned how to disarm opponents and how to use a person's size against them, but this creature looked carved from stone. I wasn't sure how much of my training would help me in this case. He lifted the club, getting ready to deliver the first strike. "If that is what you must do, I accept your terms. But my duty is to my mistress, and I must obey her." I dropped the tip of my branch and asked out of genuine curiosity, "Why?" The creature faltered. "I do not understand your question." "Why must you obey her? Look, pal, I'm new to all this stuff. I don't understand why you have to do what she says. I mean, do you want to strike me 5 times? You never even met me before today." I offered her my oath that I will fulfill this request. "Right, but you don't need protection. I mean, look at you. Why are you sworn into her service?" I am not sworn into her service, he growled, then paused. You are trying to stall me. Maybe a little, but I really am curious. Your world doesn't make sense to me. It is not my job to educate you. He lifted his club again, and I knew I had delayed as long as I could. I set my teeth together, lifted my branch, and prepared to die. I'll stop there.
People leave us in the worst places. I actually love the blend of humor with that. It's just such a lovely, deliciously snarky thing. So I want to know how it's going to go. All right. So I'm going to encourage if anyone who's attending has any questions that they would like to be asked of any specific writer or the writers in general. But I am going to start us off. And I'll start back up at the top. So I'm going to start with Valerie, putting her on the spot. What inspired your book, or what sort of was the kickoff to writing it?
Well, this book was because it's the third in my series. And the first book, the mother was spoken of, but never was there. So I knew that I wanted to find a way for her to come back and make amends in a messy, messy way.
You got to love some messy ways. All right. How about going down, working my way down here? I'm curious about Engagement to Die For. Where did the idea for this come from?
Engagement to Die For's inspiration came from, well, you could just say the entire Harlow mystery series was inspired by all the other murder mysteries I've ever read, from Agatha Christie's Murder on the Orient Express to the Hannah Swanson series by Joanne Fluke, and so many other authors whose names I have forgotten because I've read that many murder mysteries. It just kind of stemmed from a desire of, like, there are so many interesting murder mysteries out there, and I've kind of wanted to write my own. So it was just a matter of reading through so many and then just trying to see what kind of mysteries I wanted to write. And Winner Takes All and An Engagement to Die For, and the third book coming after that, which doesn't have an official title yet, are all kind of just inspired by those experiences of reading the other ones.
I think that's such a universal experience. We were talking a little bit earlier, the mystery group met this morning, and we were talking about books that were sticky or that have stuck with us for a long time. And I think so many of us, we fall in love with a genre, whether it's mystery or romance. And then we want to, after we read a few, we start thinking, I bet I could do that. And we decide we have our own story we want to tell about that. Lena, how about The Wish? Where did this idea come from? Time travel is a little different for you.
Thank you for the perfect segue about the sticky books and all that, because for me, it was, I wanted to take elements from different kinds of stories and put them together. And so The Wish is primarily women's fiction, and it's Elizabeth's journey to reclaim her voice. But I couldn't get the idea out of my head about, what if it was a thriller and there's something that's going really wrong and that's very dangerous and she has a stalker and all these things. But at the same time, I like writing romance. So it's also a romance. And then, oh, hey, time travel. What if you could redo something and have a chance to fix your mistakes? So I put those things together on purpose, and I did research about what a good thriller has and what does a romance have. And I blended them up my own way. So that's where the idea of the kind of story came from.
I think that's an interesting thing that sometimes we're reluctant to do, which is to kind of blend some different genres. And I think when we're willing to kind of take those chances, we sometimes come up with something that's a little bit fresh and different and that people haven't seen before. So I think that's...
Thank you. And it wasn't a mistake. It wasn't like, that's just the story that came out. I did that on purpose. I wanted to.
I love that. Like, it wasn't a mistake. That part was on purpose. So many things in my life are a mistake. So it's good to know we're doing it on purpose.
And the fact that she has selective mutism was something that came from both my history and my daughter's, that there are different phases where we couldn't speak. And for mine, it was, I changed schools in grade 7 and went from somewhere really comfortable to somewhere I couldn't talk at all. It was less than 3 months, but that's still a long time when you're 13 and you just can't speak.
I think it's interesting as writers how whether it's something that's maybe in the news or something that happened to us, and we kind of squirrel it away and it becomes fodder for a story for sure. I'm going to go up to Kristen. Where did this idea come from? Do you have a exciting romantic small town?
Actually, I didn't grow up in a small town. Well, for a little bit when I was a kid, but I love small towns in romance. Mostly because the characters keep popping up and they interact with each other. I like that idea of kind of to get to know the community more or less. This book actually came out of a prompt. I have a little book I picked up. It's like 1,000 prompts for romance writers, and I'll often do that. I just pick prompts and I will start a writing session with them. And the prompt was, have someone bail someone out of jail. And yeah, Courtney kind of popped up, and she right from the get-go was was bailing her grandparents out, which was kind of weird thing that turned up. And at the same time, there was lots of stuff in the news about the Fairy Creek protest. So my town is set on Vancouver Island, and I ended up kind of like working that in. But yeah, it was born out of the prompt of going to the jail, and the prompt itself has all the elements, like her showing up there harried after a day of work and like rushing in and like meeting this guy that she hasn't seen in a really long time, and not knowing that he transferred back into town. So yeah, all the elements were there, and it just kind of built out from there.
Well, I have to say, that's one of my favorite openings of books that I've read recently, is this idea of having to bail out your grandparents. I just think that's kind of absolutely perfect. And one of those things that will pull a reader in, because it just kind of sets the tone and feels so well. All right, Sarah, how did you come up with this idea?
So I started writing this book in 2016. And shortly before that, I had been in a creative writing class that did not go well. The teacher, I've learned now that he was the wrong audience for me. But his feedback made me stop writing for like 6 months. So this was, how am I going to get back into writing? What am I going to write? And I had been reading a lot of, specifically Jim Butcher, but a lot of urban fantasy. And so I decided this is the genre that I'm going to go to. How am I going to make it slightly different? And so I was like, I haven't read anything about a changeling before. So I basically started from there, and then it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Originally, I think I had intended to write 1 book, and now I have 3. So, yeah, I think that once I started writing again, and I've noticed that with my writing process, I'm a discovery writer, not a plotter at all. The more I write, the more ideas I have, and they just come like out of the blue, like showers or driving or while I'm at work cleaning, because I work in housekeeping at the hospital. And yeah, the more I write, the more the ideas come, and I'm starting to learn to trust that process. It's tricky when you're like, I don't know where this story is going. It's okay, just keep writing and you'll get there. So yeah, some of the stuff comes from everyday life, and some of the stuff comes just randomly. A lot of it comes from other books I read. I've reread a few books and I realize how much they've influenced this one. So I think that's also really fun.
Well, I feel pretty comfortable saying on behalf of everybody, I'm glad you found your way back to writing. That would have been a real loss, I think, to a lot of us if we had lost those stories. So that's fantastic. All right. I am just want to have a moment before I send you guys on your merry way, and thank all the authors, because I know there is a huge leap of faith that comes with sharing your work. It's slightly is probably the wrong adjective, freaky, to read your own words aloud. Sometimes for some of you, I know this may have been the first time you're doing it, and all of those readings were amazing. They were in the chat window, and we'll make sure to put a link up when we post this event. So if you need to find these books, which clearly you all do, because we all have some summer beach reading that needs to happen, we will make that possible for you. And I want to thank everyone who came today. I really appreciate all of you coming here. I know the authors really appreciated seeing other faces and smiling there. And there is room on the shelf for all of us. So it is a very beautiful thing to see so many authors. All right, I'm going to pass this back over to Stephanie, who's in charge.
Excellent job, everybody. Once again, as Eileen says, it's great to celebrate, and I'm glad to be part of it, and especially on this sunny Saturday that everybody came out to join. And this is really the heart of our community, where we will show up on a sunny Saturday morning to celebrate our writers. So yeah, on that note, if you do have any writing friends, please let them know about the Academy, because this is the cool place to be. And everybody has posted their links in the chat. We will post them again when we do the recording. And we've also posted our affiliate link for Amazon, because we all buy things off of Amazon. So that is a way to support the Academy so that we can keep bringing you these wonderful things. And Crystal just posted it in the chat as well. So look for the recording. It will be up in a couple of days. And for the writers, I hope that you all take a minute or an hour or the rest of the day to celebrate your achievement today, and congratulate yourselves, because like I said in the beginning, the chef sometimes forgets to eat the meal or is too tired. So make sure you do that today. Have a great day.
Thank you.